Blessings, namaste, and love, everyone. I'm spiritualist, psychic, astrologer, and medium Sette. As always, I am abundantly grateful for you to allow me this opportunity to share with you my astrological and spiritual insights. And in this segments, we will reflect and review what is occurring during the month of October 2022. Certainly, we are advancing through this year at lightning speed. As always, we suggest and to be mindful of being very present, being in the moment, as challenging as it is sometimes. Let's try not to look too far ahead because sometimes that certainly can bring about experiences of anxiety, anticipation, and when we are very dedicated and mindful of being in the moment, we do offset some of those potential negative effects such as anxiety. We begin October with Mercury moving direct. Mercury has been retrograde since September 10th. It moves direct on October 2nd. And as always, I suggest of being mindful that not until Mercury moves past the point at which it changed direction and went retrograde are we not completely out of the retrograde energies. And that date is October 17th. After October 17th, we are completely out of the retrograde influences. Remember, all planetary phenomena presents opportunities for us to embrace when we understand how to work with the energies. Even the Mercury retrograde does serve a greater purpose. It's a time to reflect, to really go within, to step back, to receive all that which we are desiring to embrace. As Mercury moves direct, whatever it is that you were reflecting on during the retrograde phase, you'll observe that clarity starts coming together. You know, I felt the need to just share a couple of things regarding the potential of astrological alignments. You know, I always suggest to recognize whenever we look ahead, nothing is absolute, nothing's guaranteed, nothing is written in stone. Yes, there are certain experiences that we have chosen to really embrace and encounter prior to this human experience. However, all planetary alignment does have positive potentiality when we understand how to work with the energies. You know, when we learn astrology, we are conventionally taught that there are adverse and positive alignments, if you will. However, it is my understanding that what may be perceived as adverse certainly does contain some very positive potential when we understand, again, how to work with the energy. For example, a square aspect. The aspects are alignments and the angles between two elements. And each type of aspect alignment has a certain type of dynamic to it. Conventionally, a 90-degree alignment is considered adverse. However, a 90-degree alignment brings about and fortifies great change. Brings about change which fortifies creative growth. Now, if we observe change as being something negative, if we feel uncomfortable with change, then we inadvertently create a negative experience. However, if we are to welcome change and we do not have the fear of change and we embrace what is being presented to us during the change, then we redirect the energy and create a more favorable, positive outcome to the planetary arrangements. I'm keeping these explanations very, very simple. So one, because if I became more complex with the understandings and the illustrations, these videos would last for many hours, and you know, I certainly don't want to bore everyone with these details, and I try to keep it as simple as possible so that we can understand really how to make the most of any alignment, and I was inspired to really begin with that because we are in an eclipse season. We are approaching our next series of eclipse. I will address them later on, specifically the solar eclipse at the end of October on the 25th. But I did want to begin with touching upon the Mercury retrograde, and that we are coming out of the energies, and to be mindful that not until October 17th are we completely out of the retrograde influences. Now, our next full moon occurs on October 9th, and that full moon is at just over 16.5 degrees of Libra, of Aries. The sun is in Libra, the full moon is in Aries, and the exact time of the full moon is 4:55 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Wherever Aries is located in our charts, or rather, let me begin by saying one of the greatest challenges with the Aries element is to recognize the importance of following through whatever it is that we initiate. Aries, it's the first sign of the tropical zodiac, so it begins. It doesn't always follow through. So wherever the Aries element is located in the chart, whatever house cusp, those can be the areas of our lives where we need to be very mindful to follow through with whatever it is that we set out to embark upon. So perhaps employ the full moon energies to really recognize on a personal level, where have you observed experiences that need to be completed and resolved. Also remember that a full moon brings to fruition, a full moon will bring to completion whatever it is in motion, specifically whatever we cast in motion at the time of a new moon generally culminates and comes together at the full moon. So specifically with this full moon, I suggest to just reflect on what facet of your life, what areas, what elements need to be completed in your lives, and allow yourself the courage to follow through with whatever that might be. Remember that Aries element, we are inspired to follow through with whatever it is that we have endeavored upon. It may also be an opportunity to recognize as to perhaps why we are not allowing ourselves to follow through with certain things. Sometimes it could be a deserving factor. In many instances, we don't feel that we have the right, perhaps, to accomplish or achieve something. That's just a very rudimentary, simple explanation to all of this. And remember, it's all very personal for every one of us. I'm offering some general insights and understandings, but we always have to look to see exactly where something is placed in a chart to have a more personal understanding as to what we are presented with certain energies, like, for example, this full moon. I would also suggest to recognize that this full moon, because it is in close proximity to the element Chiron. Chiron is a planetoid which orbits between Saturn and Uranus. The Chiron element represents also what is needed to be healed in our lives. Where Chiron is placed in our charts could be very indicative of a certain area in our lives where healing needs to be dedicated. If you look at it from this perspective, Chiron bridges the gap between the visible and the non-visible planets. Visible meaning with the naked eye. With the naked eye, we can see up to Saturn. Past Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and beyond, they are invisible, if you will, to the human eye. And those elements really represent much more higher levels of consciousness. They vibrate at an elevated vibrational frequency. That's one reason, even though they may appear as though they are far away, as to why we are unable to see them with the naked eye. Metaphysically, we understand because they are operating at a much higher vibrational frequency. That Chiron element, when we allow ourselves to really embrace sometimes some deep needed necessary healing, we advance to higher levels of consciousness, which, as I said, Chiron bridges the gap between the lower realms and the higher realms. So perhaps at this full moon, allow yourself to really recognize and embrace the courage to observe and understand perhaps where there is deep-seated healing that needs to take place. Many times these are conditions that have been embedded, ingrained in us from very, very early on in our lives, that sometimes does require courage to embrace. However, what I'm suggesting to recognize is that by embracing, employing that courage to really address these elements and apply the healing where it's necessary, it allows us to really advance to higher levels of consciousness, certainly for ourselves, but with the all of humanity as well. And these healing experiences certainly do bring about extraordinary blessings in our lives. And so that we can progress through our eclipse season, if you will, and these continued auspicious times with grace and ease, the more that we can allow ourselves to really work on ourselves, if you will, heal ourselves, and maintain an elevated vibrational frequency within the self. Remember, it needs to start within the self first, so that we may heal the discord in the outer world. When every one of us is dedicated to healing the self and really being mindful of creating within ourselves that place of love, these high vibrational frequencies, that's what we radiate out to the world. And by being so, we certainly heal the conditions of the outer world and offset and create balances and really allow ourselves to counteract any discord and dissolve the discord of the outside world. And as I said, our full moon is on October 9th. The exact time of the full moon is 4:55 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Now that brings us to the next topic, which is our new moon solar eclipse, which is on the 25th. But I want to preface it by, as always, I address what we refer to as the balsamic moon phase, which is the 3 or 4 days leading to the new moon, which is the opportunity to prepare for the lunar cycle. Now, in October, the balsamic moon phase begins on October 21st at 2:07 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That begins the preparation period for the coming new moon. Now, as I have addressed in other videos, that with a solar eclipse, just as a new moon begins a new lunar cycle on a month-to-month basis, a solar eclipse begins a longer-term cycle of experience, which sometimes can last many months and can also often last, on occasion, for many, many years. So because of that, we are provided with additional time to prepare for this cycle of experience. And with a new moon solar eclipse, generally the 3 months leading up to the event, we are presented with the experience of preparing for what we will begin at this new moon solar eclipse. Sometimes it's even 6 months in advance, which is the prior eclipse cycle, which sometimes can even prepare us for a certain eclipse experience. So what I would suggest to recognize is what it is that perhaps you began in the August time frame. What were you being inspired to clear away? Because that balsamic moon phase, the 3 months leading up to the solar eclipse, it's a clearing, cleansing period. So perhaps allow yourself to recognize what you need to continually address that needs to be cleared away and broken away from, so that you can energetically prepare for the next lunar cycle and the next eclipse phase, which begins on October 25th. Now that begins with the balsamic moon phase on the 21st. Now on October 23rd, the sun moves into the sign of Scorpio, and the exact time of that is 6:36 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, when the sun transits into the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the one which most represents transformation, great and profound transformations, which allow us to recognize the power that is within all of us. And I've always expressed to understand that when we highlight and we talk about the power within, it's so that we can recognize that we are the master of our destiny, and that we are very much creating and co-creating all the experience in our lives, and that we have the ability to bring to form all that is that we choose and desire to experience. The Scorpio time frame, we go into what is perhaps sometimes observed as a dark time. However, that darkness, it's not negative. It does serve a purpose. It's a time to go within, to reflect, to really observe and understand at times what is going on, what is lurking in the shadows. Scorpio is the element that most represents the shadow realm, the unknown, what's going on behind the scenes. And with the next eclipse, which is a solar eclipse, new moon on October 25th, it is in the early degree signs of Scorpio. So this is another opportunity to allow ourselves the courage to transform and to recognize the power and to also honor that every one of us is the master of our destiny. Remember, nothing in the outside world, whether it's the physical or the non-physical, no matter how great, how strong, how powerful, or how perhaps evil something is, no thing has power over us unless we allow it to overpower us, unless we give away our power to that element. For example, an entity, a dark entity, no matter how dark something is, especially when we refer to the lowest vibrational frequency elements such as demons and other types of entities, none of those have power over us unless we allow them that power. Many times a dark entity will be relentless at trying to get us to surrender our power, and by doing so, it can override our free will. No matter how strong anything is, it does not have the power to override our free will if we don't allow it. Now, yes, we are presented at times with certain challenges that might seem insurmountable, but in those moments, those are the greatest moments for us to recognize what we are capable of being, and how strong we are, and how we have the blessings, if you will, to rise above any challenge. This Scorpio element is really the opportunity, again, to recognize the power of divinity that is in all of us. And that does not mean that we control or manipulate others. This is so that we recognize we have opportunities to really craft and direct our own lives. You know, the Scorpio time frame begins, as I said, what sometimes is observed as a dark period. We're moving through the autumn time frame. We are approaching the winter. These are all opportunities to go within, to really step back from the outside world. Remember, in the winter time, so much goes on beneath the surface. The same can take place for us as well. And this Scorpio time frame does begin the opportunity of some great personal transformations for every one of us. As always, it is my desire and intention that these videos inspire every one of us to know our power and our greatest potential. I will be returning to the Fort Myers area in November. I'm coming back to the mystical moons, both the Fort Myers and the Bonita Beach locations. My first day of sessions is November 14th. Certainly Florida right now is challenged with certain experiences which took place in these last few weeks. And as always, we hold space for that area, and we infuse as much as possible the element of love, so that all those who may have been challenged with certain experiences recognize their own power to rise above and transform through this, what seems to be a devastating experience. And when we can all collectively concentrate our energy, specifically the element of love, towards a certain place, We assist in the healing process as well as the elevation to higher levels of consciousness, which we all are inspired to embrace during these most auspicious times. Once again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm spiritualist, psychic, astrologer, and medium Sette. I look forward to working with everyone again in Florida very soon. I look forward to returning to Florida. The Southwest Florida area has become my second home. I first visited the area in 1988, and it has very much become a second home, and I am very grateful for everyone who welcomes me into their lives, either through these experiences or during our personal sessions at the centers. Once again, stay in the light and always in a place of love. Many blessings, everyone. Namaste.